Monday compared to the weekend, so the sunshine a bit hazier at times, but generally staying settled through until the middle part of the week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight in My Take at 10, a Lloyds Bank boss has condemned the Prime Minister for pointing out there's a difference between a man and a woman. Britain's corporations are now institutionally woke. What utter bankers. Plus, the top rabbi who's resigned from the FA over their Israel starts, Channel 4's Kim Woodburn on the departure of Holly Willoughby from This Morning, and the extraordinary story of the woman who suffers from a rare condition that turns her into a statue. We're live from 9.
Good evening, how are you? It's great to have your company. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Thousands of pro-Palestine supporters marched in central London today with reports of several arrests. We'll bring you the latest. And we'll be asking whether those waving the flag of Hamas terrorists should face criminal prosecution. In the big story, we'll be joined by the respected Rabbi who's resigned from the FA over their refusal to shine the colours of the Israeli flag on the Wembley Arch. In my big opinion, Emmanuel Macron is stealing Britain's millionaires with generous tax rates. Britain's war on the wealthy has got to end. We need their money. And in my Take at 10, you won't believe this story. A Lloyds Bank boss has condemned the Prime Minister for pointing out there's a difference between a man and a woman. Britain's corporations are now institutionally woke. What utter bankers. Glad I said that word right. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. Of course, we're going to bring you the latest from what's happening in Israel and Gaza. But it is Saturday night, so we thought we'd go for some other stories as well and some entertainment along the way. So lots to get through. It's going to be a busy 2 hours. First, here's the news and a good friend of mine, Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Israel's military says it's preparing to attack Hamas by land, sea and air in what they say will be a comprehensive, coordinated offensive. Earlier, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, warned the next stage is coming as he visited troops stationed on the front line near the Gaza Strip. Hundreds of thousands of reservists have been mobilised and no timings have been given, but more than 1 million residents in northern Gaza have been told to evacuate. Forces have been deployed throughout the country as Israel prepares for significant ground operations. Mr. Netanyahu has previously pledged to wipe Hamas from the face of the earth. His administration has also warned Hezbollah not to intervene and that doing so would risk the destruction of Lebanon. Well, a deadline given for the evacuation of civilians from northern Gaza has now expired. Thousands of people have been fleeing south towards the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. The only route out of Gaza not under Israeli control has been closed because of airstrikes, although the United States says it's trying to negotiate a 5-hour window to allow civilians out and humanitarian aid into the enclave. A young British girl who's trapped in Gaza says she fears for her life.
I'm really in fear, and every time I just have to have the thought of me dying in a bomb in Gaza. It's not a good thing. And every place I go run away, and I just find bombs and I find dead people, and maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
Well, those who haven't been able to leave Gaza are squeezing into UN schools, hospitals and makeshift shelters as Israeli airstrikes continue. The Palestinian Health Ministry says dozens of people were killed when a convoy of vehicles heading south on a safe route was targeted yesterday. Israel says Hamas is preventing people from leaving to use them as human shields, which the terror group denies. Gaza authorities say more than 2,200 people have been killed, a quarter of them children, and nearly 10,000 wounded. There have also been reports elsewhere in the country of exchanges of fire in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights, that's in southwestern Syria, and also with Hezbollah at the border with Lebanon. Tens of thousands of people gathered for pro-Palestinian demonstrations across the UK today as the conflict in Gaza escalates. Marchers filled the streets of London and also gathered in Manchester, Liverpool, Edinburgh and other parts of the country, urging world leaders to condemn Israel's actions. The Met Police said 7 people had been arrested, including 1 for criminal damage and 2 for public order offences. And the Qatari banker Sheikh Yassim has withdrawn from the process to buy Manchester United. The billionaire's offer of around £5 billion was for 100% of the club, and he also pledged further funding for infrastructure projects and to clear debt. British businessman Sir Jim Ratcliffe of the Ineos Group is the only other declared bidder. He's understood to be working on a 25% stake, and that would see the American Glazer family retain majority control of the club. That is it for the moment. I'll be back with more a little later this evening, but for the moment, it's over to Mark.
Well, we've got the dream team tonight. My thanks to the brilliant Mr. Armstrong, who's back in an hour's time to bring you the latest on what's happening in Gaza and, of course, Israel. And we've got Greg, Amy, Melissa and Lottie. It's going to be a busy show. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion, Emmanuel Macron is stealing Britain's millionaires with generous tax rates. Britain's war on the wealthy has got to end. We need their money. Thousands of pro-Palestinian supporters have marched across the UK today, with 7 arrests in London. We'll bring you the latest, and we'll be asking whether those waving the flag of Hamas terrorists should face criminal prosecution. In a big story, we'll be joined by the respected Rabbi who has resigned from the FA over their refusal to shine the colours of the Israeli flag on the Wembley Arch. As ITV descend into civil war over the departure of Holly Willoughby, can This Morning survive? I'll be asking the Formula regular on the show and ex-This Morning star, Kim Woodburn. In Mark Meets, the extraordinary story of the woman who suffers from a rare condition that turns her into a statue, an affliction also suffered by pop singer Celine Dion. It's an extraordinary story. She joins us before 10. In my take at 10, you'll love this story. A Lloyds Bank boss has condemned the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, for pointing out there's a difference between a man and a woman. Britain's corporations are now institutionally woke. What utter bankers. Also, the King and Princes William and Harry call Hamas terrorists. So why can't the BBC? And is Joe Biden fit to handle this international crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. We've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30, which will no doubt be dominated by what's happening in the Middle East. We'll get reaction from 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Lynn May, Benedict Spence and Lisa McKenzie. Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. This show has a golden rule. We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So look, we're going to bring you lots of detail on what's happening in Israel, in Gaza. But it is Saturday night, so we want to have some fun as well and go for some other topics. I hope you'll agree that's the right thing to do. But we will keep you updated with any developments, including the Rabbi who has resigned from the FA over their Israel stance. So lots to get through. We start with this. Well done, everyone. The Telegraph report that the erstwhile French President Emmanuel Macron is stealing Britain's millionaires, with the UK's super-rich dwindling in number as they make their way across the Channel. Merde. Where once Britain was a world leader in attracting the super-rich to our shores, punishing tax changes have sent them running for the hills. More millionaires are now emigrating from the UK than arriving, according to analysis by migration consultancy Henley & Partners. The country, you won't believe this figure, Britain has lost 12,000 wealthy individuals since 2017. That is, those with assets and cash of more than 800 grand. 1,500 rich people left in 2022. This exodus has not been helped by the watering down of tax benefits for people who have so-called non-dom status, British residents who have a permanent home abroad. Tax collected from these rich individuals is over £1 billion less annually than it was in 2017. We've lost £500 million in national insurance contributions from these people and 70-odd million from capital gains tax. We are making ourselves poorer. Meanwhile, Macron, a canny politician for whom my respect grows, is hoovering up these high net worth individuals, and France are now number 3 in the world for having the most millionaires behind China and the US. So how have they done it? Well, tax breaks for the rich. Left-leaning politicians in France were furious with Macron when he introduced radical tax reforms, scrapping the contentious wealth tax on everything except property assets. He also introduced a 30% flat rate tax on capital gains, dividends and interests. He has effectively halved the tax paid by the very wealthy. So it seems that these rich people are not only moving to France for the croissant, it's a safe place for their money. Now, why does this matter to you and me? Isn't it right that the wealthiest should pay the most? Well, of course, I'm very sad that our world is so unequal. But I live in the real world too. The reality is that if you clobber wealthy people, they just go somewhere else. If you want to have a successful economy, it's got to have successful people in it. It's a simple choice. You can go after the rich, but they take their cash elsewhere. How much of a victory is it for the British people if millionaires are investing their money in Singapore or Dubai rather than here? How much of a victory is it for the British people if rich people are buying their Rolls Royces in Paris or Luxembourg rather than London or Manchester? In the end, the tax receipts that wealthy people in this country deliver, and they cough up disproportionately more than the rest of us, pay for the NHS, they pay for policing, they pay for schools and defence and all of the public services that we value so much. But with these punitive taxes for the wealthy, we're sending a message that they are not welcome in the United Kingdom. Taxing the rich might make an attractive headline, but in the end, it's an act of self-harm and a race to the bottom. Which is why Labour's plans to scrap the tax breaks for non-DOMs altogether means more of the super wealthy jumping on the Eurostar as fast as their legs can carry them. Their frog's legs. Emmanuel Macron is not stupid. He understands that an economy is based on wealth creators, and he understands the huge value that millionaire foreigners bring to his country, at exactly the same time that we're telling them to bugger off. It's time to end the war on the wealthy. We need their money. We're losing our way, folks. For a country that calls itself the home of enterprise and the home of aspiration, all of this is a bit rich. I must say, I do get my daily exercise dashing across that studio like that. Almost like the Wembley pitch. OK, let's get reaction from yourselves. Mark at GBNews.com. What do you think? I would argue that we should absolutely look after rich people. We want them to be here because we need their cash, we need their investment, and we want them spending money in London, Manchester, Belfast, Cardiff and Edinburgh, not Dubai and Singapore. Of course, Labour would argue that the lower taxes for non-DOMs is deeply unfair and will raise billions. So, look, it's all about opinions. What's yours? Let's now get the reaction of my top pundits tonight. We have political commentator Lynn May, writer Benedict Spence and academic Lisa Mackenzie. Lynn, what do you think about this?
I agree with everything you said. And this is what happens when you have a country that is seeming to be anti-growth. You know, it's non-ambitious, it's non-aspirational, and I wouldn't blame these people for going abroad. If you think about 20 years ago, 39.6% of taxes were paid by the 5%, top 5%. Now it's 50%. So all these people that continuously hate the rich or tax the rich more, they're paying the majority of the taxes already. And without them, like you said, they don't have to stay here. If we continue to hate them, we drive them away, and who's going to pay the majority of the taxes?
Well, that's right. I mean, clobbering the super rich, Benedict, might make a good headline. It might make all of us feel better, but it just makes us poorer.
I'd be curious to know what the demographics are, though. What age group are these super wealthy people? Because this is one of the things that we do need to bear in mind is, as wonderful as Britain is and as wonderful as London is, it is not really a place that is conducive rather to a certain type of lifestyle. A lot of people who make a lot of money in later life, they decide to swap Britain, which is, it's a nice place, but it is not as nice as, say, the south of France, and they decide to move
wait a minute, hold fire for a second.
They
don't have the full English breakfast. They don't have HP sauce.
When you've got that kind of money, you can get anything on the French Riviera. It is not a problem. And actually, I hate to say it, but some of the ingredients, the croissant, they're obviously better. The orange juice is obviously better on the south of France.
But rich people are motivated by money, and if it was cheaper to live in Britain, they would likely stay.
A lot more people, I think, would certainly keep their tax affairs in the UK, but I think if you're somebody who has decided you're going to the golden years of your life, if you like, and you don't plan on spending that much time in the UK, actually it makes a lot of sense to just wrap it up, tie it up, make it all nice and easy if you're moving your life to, say, the south of France or Italy.
I don't know, the south of France has always been there, though. Why?
I'd like Mark.
1,200 last year.
Mark, I'd just like to sort of know more about these figures, because you said we're going to lose £1 billion in tax.
We've so far, since 2017, we've lost a billion.
OK, well, we almost lost £500 million last week when Bernie Ecclestone didn't sort of say what he'd got.
Of course.
So the thing is let's not be sort of kind about these rich people. They hide their money. The wealth inequality at the top is getting larger and larger. The inequality between the sort of 0.01% and then the rest is getting larger and larger. They are hiding money. They are removing money away from countries. So therefore, they're not actually.
Lisa,
they're not.
I hear you about Bernie Ecclestone.
Yeah.
And
that was last week.
My mother would.
That was last week.
My mother would say that billionaires are billionaires for a reason, and then they're probably pretty.
Because they're probably.
But
because their dads were millionaires. That's why they're billionaires.
Lisa, I share your sadness that we live in an unequal world. I think it's dreadful that there are people driving around in cars that would be
that are gold
enough to that you could buy 5 houses. But how does it benefit Britain? How does it benefit my viewers and listeners if these rich people are living in France instead?
I'll tell you what. Let's start to think about what's happened in London. People who live in London know what's happened to property in London. Over the last 20 years, property has gone out of control. Ordinary people can't afford to live in London, and then that's had and that is mainly because of overseas investors using property in London as money boxes rather than homes.
Well, I think that's different.
Well, that's had a major effect on the rest of the country.
I think normally you're very straight talking, Lisa, but I think you're dodging the question.
I'm not.
You've not told me. Let's imagine that there's a rich person who has one property in London and they buy their Rolls Royces here. How does it benefit us for them to move to another country and spend their money and invest their money elsewhere?
Well, how does it not? I mean, one person. I mean,
OK, well, let me give you an example. What's the VAT on a Rolls Royce? Probably £50,000. So if they buy a roller in London or Manchester, the Exchequer, the Treasury get that cash. But if they're in France or if they're in Singapore, they don't.
And then also what you've got as well is if they and when do they have one house? I mean, when does that happen?
Well, if it's houses, by the way, stamp duty.
One thing I was saying that I was interested in the demographics of this is if you go through central London, actually, because you mentioned rather tellingly the gold cars that you see. Very often they have number plates that have either the UAE or they have Saudi Arabia or they have something similar on them. Before the war in Ukraine, you saw a lot of young Russians in there. A lot of people come from overseas, younger people, to London because London is a super city. It's something that other cities around the world,
people that just have 800,000.
I'm not talking about those as really rich.
We might be losing older millionaires, older billionaires who are British, but young people, they come here. And this is the other thing. The great banking exodus that we were told they're all going to move to Paris and Frankfurt hasn't happened. They stay here because London is a city for young and dynamic people, not for old.
But we're not talking about the demographic that is reflective of the uber rich, Saudi sheiks. We're talking about people that just have 800,000. Well, I know to a lot of people that's a lot of money, but that could be from someone who had 2 properties and they've sold it and thought it doesn't benefit me to stay in this country. And if we, as I said previously, only 5% pay the majority of the tax, so we can, all 3 of us, hate the rich and continue to say let's tax them more, but they pay the majority.
Briefly, if you can. Briefly, if you can.
Well, all I'm saying is that the super rich that we have in this country has not benefited us as a country or as a nation or as a society.
What about the tax receipts that they
but again, what about the amount of tax that they don't pay? I mean, a few years.
What about the tax that they do pay?
Well, I know they won't pay that anyway.
Even if they are crooked, even if they are crooked, if they pay £1 million a year, I'll take that. £1 million is more than nothing.
And Ecclestone's been held to account. Now he has to pay out a lot.
500 grand. What is he hiding?
Listen, I'm going to get in trouble with Greg. Let me tell you that I want your views. I think if you clobber the rich, you feel better, but the country's poorer. But let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.com. Coming up next, in the big story, we're joined by the respected Rabbi who has resigned from the FA over their refusal to shine the colours of the Israeli flag on the Wembley Arch. That is unmissable telly, and that's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It turns out that Emmanuel Macron is stealing our millionaires. I think we should bring down the taxes on rich people because we need their money. Well, big reaction on email, mark@gbnews.com. Alan says, Mark, if the non-DOMs leave, Labour's NHS, or is it dentist or schools plan, or whatever else the non-DOM tax is paying for, will be dead in the water. What is Starmer's plan B? Tax, tax and tax again. Kevin says, Mark, you're missing one of the main reasons why wealthy people leave the UK. The bloody weather. There you go. Can't argue with that one. And can't change it either, can we? Keep those emails coming. It's time now for the big story. And a rabbi who has worked with the FA for over a decade has resigned in protest of their refusal to light up the Wembley Arch in the colours of the Israeli flag. Rabbi Alex Goldberg, the University of Surrey's Dean of Religious Life and Belief and campus rabbi, sent a letter to Mark Bullingham, the CEO of the FA, expressing his disappointment. In the letter, Rabbi Goldberg said, tonight, I want to formally break the link between our advisory group and the Football Association. In doing so, I feel I can better express my profound disappointment in the FA's decision not to have a specific tribute during the upcoming matches against Australia and Italy at Wembley Stadium to the victims of the worst single atrocity committed against Jewish targets since the Shoah. This comes especially in the light of the global solidarity shown in response to the tragic murder of 1,000 civilians in Israel, encompassing all ages and walks of life, including 17 British citizens that saw Downing Street, the Eiffel Tower and the Empire State Building lit up in white and blue. Well, I'm privileged to say that Rabbi Goldberg joins us now. And Rabbi, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Why do you think the FA have failed to carry out this gesture?
Thank you, Mark. I'm not sure why the FA have failed to carry out this gesture. I think that they have lost the idea of morality, really. They're trying to make moral equivalence. Let me be very clear that this tragedy, the atrocious nature, you just read out my statement, of last Saturday's actions, what happened a week ago, was a premeditated, planned action against men, women, children, and babies. And then several years ago, Mark, I brought an interfaith group, an intercultural group. That's what I work in. I bring together communities, both in the UK and in the Middle East. I am very involved in Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, Jordanian, Lebanese dialogue as well. I don't usually make statements like this, but the tragedy was so enormous that I thought we had to mark it. And I brought an interfaith group a number of years ago after the massacres in Paris, where I think you'll recall the arch was lit up in the tricolour, and the crowd sang the Marseillaise. Israel is an ally of the United Kingdom. This is an attack on its civilians, which has led directly to the conflict and the pictures we're seeing today of war. And as von Clausewitz says, all war is hell, and hell is happening now in the Middle East. I pray as a rabbi who has friends in Lebanon, in the Palestinian areas, in Israel, Jordan, whatever, this just stops. And this madness stops, but in some way, and that we can curtail the violence. But I thought that a specific tribute needed to be made to those victims. Mark, I'm a university chaplain, as you pointed out, and I've spoken to 40 to 50 students and staff this week. One of them told me, the first call I got was from a student who lost his best friend on Saturday. He told me 2 days later that he found out his younger brother had lost another friend. Some of the names are coming out slowly. The next student I spoke to has been attacked twice in Guildford. She's training to be a midwife in the NHS and has she's a single mum with a 5-year-old autistic child. She has a mezuzah on her door, the stick that Jews have on their door. A gang surrounded her door, trying to smash it in or knock on it or make loud noises. Eventually threw a rotten chicken through her window with sauce. They came back 2 days later. Her autistic child is living in fear as anti-Semitic attacks on our people go up threefold. I then met people in our community who spent time on kibbutz be'eri in their life and have lost many, many friends. Coming on air tonight, another friend, again, somebody like me who is very well known in interfaith, has just found out her friend survived the attack on that kibbutz, but most of her friends have passed away. For them, and so I could look them in the face last night when I did Friday night dinner, I had to make a stand. That's why, Mark.
And you've made quite a sacrifice because you've been with the FA for 10 years now, and I'm sure that you did it with a heavy heart. Now, we've reached out to the FA for comment. They have yet to respond. Yes. They have acknowledged the tragedy. The players wore armbands for that England-Australia game, and a minute's silence was observed. Are you persuaded by the idea that the Football Association simply didn't want to take sides? Does that wash with you?
It's not about taking sides. This is a question of humanity. Hamas targeted people in that area. That included Bedouin Arab Muslims. It included many Jews, obviously the vast majority of victims were. It included international community and who were raving, who were partying in a secular way on a Jewish festival. They were just young people. And this was planned. There's more and more coming out about this, and more and more verified documents, and I believe in verified news, that the Hamas, they are terrorists. The Hamas terrorists were captured with maps looking to seize schools and youth clubs, potentially to kidnap, potentially to kill. What sort of person does this? This is an atrocious act, and it's this act that I wanted to be marked in a significant way. Any statement put out, there are good statements out this week, Mark. There are statements out this week that say that they condemn this atrocious act and they single it out, and they have concerns about the loss of life, Palestinian loss of life, Jewish loss of life, and that is occurring in this conflict right now that's resulted directly from Hamas's actions. I'm not a politician. I'm not a spokesman of the Israeli government, and it'd be very odd if I was. That's not my usual place. But I am a rabbi, and I feel that I need to speak up for my community because many feel they are unable. There are many Jewish people working in the FA who feel unable to speak up, and I need to give them a voice.
Rabbi,
people,
the clock is against us. Rabbi Goldberg, the clock is against us, but there has been widespread disappointment about the world of football, how they've responded to this. We had the Premier League tweeting a statement about an escalating crisis, but no focus on a terror attack on innocent civilians. The BBC aren't using the word terrorist, but the King is, and so is the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Sussex. So it's good enough for the King, but not good enough for the national broadcaster. And now the FA will not shine the colours of the Israeli flag onto the famous Wembley Arch. Briefly, if you can, what kind of message does that send to the Jewish people living in this country who are facing an escalation of abuse and Jewish people around the world?
I think the message it sends is that they don't care. They don't care. On Thursday, on the day they made the decision, they also wrote to me to say they wanted to downsize the Hanukkah party. I mean, I don't care why, but timing is everything, isn't it, Mark? We need to care, and we need to make a moral stance, and that's what I'm doing. And of course, I will make a moral stance next week or the week after, if there are other tragedies around the world. I believe in humanitarian law, I believe in human rights, and I believe in peace in the Middle East. But right now, I wanted a statement to be made. And tomorrow, I will rebuild relations between communities and hope that we will achieve peace both here and the Middle East. But we need for the Jewish community to be rest assured that they are safe. I know that. Can I finish, Mark, with just one story? I mean, I was sitting outside a kosher supermarket in northwest London. Heavily armed police for their not our protection, their protection. 2 8-year-old women had their bags searched as they went into their local supermarket, and then they turned around to me and apologized for delaying them. That's Britain in 2023. We need to give reassurance to our Jewish community, and we need to give reassurance to those who have lost people in this atrocity last weekend. Most people I know either know somebody or know somebody that knows somebody. There are many. Most British Jews have family in Israel, children, cousins, nephews, aunts. There are 50,000 British passport holders living in Israel today. There are 300,000 Jews living in Britain. You can do the maths. This is not about politics. This is about ties of kinship, and I think we need reassurance.
Rabbi Alex Goldberg, thank you so much for your time and all of our wishes
Thank you, Mark.
at this awful moment for Jewish people in the UK and around the world. Thank you very much. Coming up with tonight's Newsmaker, and it's a slightly different story because it is Saturday night, so a bit of a gear change, but it turns out ITV is in the full throes of a civil war over the departure of Holly Willoughby. So can this morning survive? I'll be asking a former regular on the show, TV star Kim Woodburn. Plus, we've been asking in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, should those waving the flag of Hamas terrorists face criminal prosecution? Well, the results are in, and I shall bring them to you after this.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, in the course of today, we've been conducting a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. I've been asking, should those waving the flag of Hamas face criminal prosecution? Well, the results are in, and it's 84% say yes, they should be prosecuted, and 16% say no. We'll debate that with the pundits later. A couple of emails. Do we tax rich people too much? It turns out that many are now going to France. I think it's bad news. I think it's a race to the bottom. Elizabeth says, why can't the left understand that we have to persuade the rich to stay and pay? We can't force them to. Also, if you lower and flatten the taxes, more money comes in. Mark says, Shirley, I'm appalled at the apparent lack of support for Israelis, considering how much support has been shown to BLM. The Wembley Arch should have been lit up in blue and white. Why have those protesting against Israel not been arrested for their support of Hamas? Susan, finally, says these hypocrites at the FA are happy to have people take the knee for a corrupt organisation, but money is more important than showing support for those executed. The FA are disgusting and really should be boycotted, says Susan. Now, folks, after a horrible few days, shall we have a bit of light relief and talk about ITV in crisis? The editor of This Morning, who was presenter Holly Willoughby's former rock, was left out of her sudden exit conversation. According to reports, Martin Frizzell, who has produced the show since 2016, was said to have supported Holly throughout the Philip Schofield scandal. However, despite their close bond, it's been alleged that Martin, who's the husband of TV presenter Fiona Phillips, reportedly found out that Holly had decided to leave This Morning just 20 minutes before she went public with it. A source told the Mail Online, Martin always spoke so highly of Holly. He adored her and he was extremely loyal. It's the talk of ITV that he was told so late on. The insider continues, it doesn't exactly seem overly respectful. What a way to treat an editor. Well, there you go, folks. There's trouble in paradise. Let's get reaction to this bombshell story with a major TV star in her own right, Channel 4 presenter and the Queen of Clean, Kim Woodburn. Kim, great to have you back on the show. If this is true, do you think the producer has a right to be offended?
Not at all. Look, she showed no respect for Philip Schofield. 14 years she worked with him. She went behind his back and threw him under the bus. Why would Frizzell presume that she's going to show respect to him? The only person she respects is herself. I mean, let's face it. Look, I said it and I'm going to say it again. Sorry, listeners. She's a bitch. She's a bitch. Now, look. She turned up at the television awards. She meant how she had the nerve. Honestly, I wouldn't like her nerve in my tooth, dear. She turned up in her gown, sitting there.
Can I stop you in your tracks? I don't like to interrupt you because, of course, it's all about opinions on this show. Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of diverse opinion. But don't you think calling her a bitch is a little harsh?
No, I don't think. I think any person that works with a partner for 14 years and throws him under the bus and expects to have the same influence she had. Look, Philip and her went together. I don't think she's a good presenter. She's not a presenter. She's a, oh, yes, no. He was the presenter. And if it hadn't been Philip Schofield, I don't like Philip Schofield. I'm not going to say I do. But let's face it, he kept her in work, my love. He was the harsh one that, although he thought he was rude, entertaining, she was the one that took 14 years of top salary, sitting there saying, oh, Philip, never once said, Philip, I don't agree with the word you're saying. She she would say it clear, I've got no time. She thought when she got rid of Philip, she was going to turn up at the awards. She was going to be the top cat. The look on her face when that show was mentioned at the television awards, and this is true, a good third, perhaps more of the audience at the television awards, her own colleagues booed. A horrendous boo went up.
And Kim, I hear you, but I mean, let's go through some of what you've said. So you say that she threw Philip under the bus. Well, I mean, she stood loyally next to him and by him for 14 years. Secondly, you say that she...
on good money.
Okay, well, she was obviously paid well for it. You also said that she's a bad TV presenter or not talented. Well, she's done just about every show you can think of. She's got millions of viewers. And I just wonder about that language you've used. I mean, don't you think she would be quite upset? I mean, I'm tempted to apologise to my viewers for the language you've used. Why do you think you would go that far to use such an expletive about a very popular star?
But she's not popular. It's ridiculous to say that. You speak to people and you hear them talk and they say to you, well, I'm glad she's gone. This popularity is built up by the channel she works for. When Philip went, for whatever reason, Holly was finished. Phil and Holly went together. He was the rude one, she was the passive one. We couldn't do without the rude one. When she got rid of him, she got rid of herself. She is not that popular. She sneaked into the Queen's memorial service and she's the only one. He admitted he was lying. She still says to this day, oh no, I was working. She's a bitch. I am sorry, and I will say it. I say what I think. And I speak to a lot of people that say to me, Kim, do you know something? You're absolutely right. A bitch is a bitch, and I'll tell you something else I do not understand.
Kim, let me just say that I disassociate myself from that language. This show is, we're post-watershed, so you can use fruity language if you want. But I just think, Kim, I'll come back to you in a moment. I think that Holly's been through a lot in the last few months. Okay,
he can do what he likes.
Kim, let me come back to you.
That is not a sin. Many a man has an affair, providing he has an affair with a person of age. Why should why should you throw him off a show?
Okay, now, Kim, look, I know...
Why would you
Kim,
throw him off the show?
Let me speak. Now, I understand your feelings are running high, and listen, no one gets cancelled, not on my watch. But I just think that kind of very aggressive, almost violent language, I don't think it becomes you, Kim. I don't think it's appropriate for a talented young broadcaster who has had a very tough few months, all right? I mean, she's basically seen her career hanging by a thread after all that happened with Philip Schofield. I mean, she wasn't responsible for what Philip did whilst working for ITV. Meanwhile, she's had some serious issues in terms of her personal safety as well. And I just think that, I think you've gone too far there, Kim. And I just, I'd like to apologise to my viewers for what you've said, using the B word about Holly Willoughby. You can be a fan of hers or not, but I don't think that language is right.
I think they've cut me off, if you want me to be truthful.
Okay, Kim, listen, let's regroup and we will speak on another occasion. This show is all about opinions. What's yours? Mark at GBnews.com. Listen, you know that anything goes on this show. Have you ever seen me censor somebody? I can't stand that. GB News is the home of free speech, but I just think Kim went too far there. I think it was abusive language. It's a swear word. And what is Holly Willoughby's great crime? She's a TV host. She does what I do. She reads an auto cue. I mean, I write my own material. But listen, you know, the bottom line is that she entertains millions of people. She's got a successful business. It's a lifestyle business that she runs, and she's got a partnership with M&S. The woman is popular, and I'm quite shocked that on my show she's been described in that way with the B word, and I'm not having it. However, Kim will return because nobody gets cancelled, not on my watch, but I will ask her not to abuse people in a gratuitous way next time she's on. But we will kiss and make up because Kim and I have a special relationship. Now, coming up in Mark Meets, the extraordinary story of the woman who suffers from a rare condition that turns her into a statue, an affliction also suffered by pop singer Celine Dion. It's an extraordinary story, and that's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up in my take at 10, a Lloyds Bank boss has condemned the Prime Minister for pointing out there's a difference between a man and a woman. Britain's corporations are now institutionally woke. Oh, we'll deal with that at 10 o'clock, but first, Mark Meets. Can we get through the next 10 minutes without fruity language? It is time for Mark Meets, and this evening, a very courageous woman who suffers from a rare condition that she has in common with the singer Celine Dion. Karen Long suffers from stiff person syndrome, or SPS, and has lived with the symptoms for the past 12 years. She can no longer cross the road over fears that she could quite literally turn into a human statue, as her excruciating spasms cause her muscles to lock into place, causing her to fall over. She has demonstrated extraordinary courage in speaking out about this, and I'm delighted to say that she joins me now. Karen, thank you so much for coming on Mark Dolan tonight. More power to you for sharing your story. I'm so sorry to hear of what you've been going through. What were your first symptoms at the start of this? When did you notice that something was wrong?
Good evening, Mark. I think at first it was I started to fall. I was a little bit unsteady on my feet, but was told that it was anxiety. It's all in my head. And I had MRI scans, I had back scans, but nothing ever came up.
And what activities that most of us take for granted are you now unable to do, Karen?
Put a sock on.
The basics.
Yeah, the basics. People don't realise it's very difficult that I can close my eyes and walk around my home without knowing where I'm going, because I have to understand where I'm going, because you cannot be away from a sign, from a door, a sign, or anything like that.
If your body does freeze, Karen, how long before you get movement again?
It really depends. If I fall, then when I fall, it's normally a trip to NE. If not, I have to wait a good 30, 40 minutes for the body to say, actually, Karen, that's okay. You can take another step.
And you literally sort of freeze like a statue. That's language that you've used yourself to describe it.
100%. I've had one today. I've got a new assistant pup, and I was walking today with my walker, and I just had a moment. And you just literally, when you stop, there is nothing you can do. Your body freezes completely.
Karen, do we know what triggers this disease or how it works?
It's a neurological disease. So it causes progressive muscle stiffness, painful spasms. There are triggers like traffic noise. So if someone beeped a horn whilst I was walking past, I would fall. Because I don't...
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Apologies, Karen. The line's not the best. But how many people do you think have this condition in the UK or around the world? How rare is it? I mean, we've mentioned Celine Dion. Celine Dion suffers from it. But how common is this illness?
It's 1 in a million. And I've now been having treatment now for 8 years. So I go into hospital every 4 weeks. And I get flooded with somebody else's antibodies, which means they fight mine, because my antibodies fight my neurological system. So it means that all my antibodies have something else to fight rather than me.
Karen, do you have much support? Do you have a partner?
I do have a partner. We don't live together, but I do have a partner, Andy. I have a carer. And I've now just got an assistance dog, which is great. Well-ish, because it's a pup. Hence, I probably look a bit tired, just saying. But no, I've got my friends. It's very difficult because when you look normal, people assume you're well. But there are things I can't do. There are things I don't want to do. I don't want to cross the road. I don't want to cross an open space. And when it comes to Celine, when it comes to the spasms in your body, they are horrific.
Yeah. And you do look well. You look absolutely fabulous on a Saturday night. And I'm delighted that you've got your partner for support and also this dog as well. What's the pup called?
Orla.
Orla. Right, lovely Irish name, I approve. And what's the idea of having Orla? How's she going to help you once she grows up a bit?
Number one, it's companionship. Because it's quite an isolated disease because people will, it's very difficult because I would love to go and see all my friends every Saturday night or every Friday night. But if you make plans, you can't do it. So having her, and then I can help her train to help me do things like empty the washing machine, open the fridge freezer, because there are things I can't do, which I want to do, and I will try to do, but I can't.
And Karen, what has this done to your mental health? How do you get through every day?
Meds.
Really? So you need that medication.
I have to have medication every day. My friends, my true friends, are really understanding that when I say that they try to plan something, I'll go, yeah, I'll come. Yeah, I'm up for it. Yeah, great. No, I know I won't. Because by the time it happens, I'm never going to do it.
Listen, Karen, I know you don't want to be seen as a victim. You don't want this illness to define you, and it absolutely shouldn't. But what can my viewers and listeners do to help?
The biggest thing anyone could possibly do, and I recently went to the Reading reopening of the plasma centre, and it was absolutely amazing to see normal people just going, donating blood, donating plasma. Because for me, every 4 weeks, I go in and have all of this treatment. Without these selfless people, I would exist and wouldn't have a life.
Well, I'm delighted you do exist. You're an amazing lady. I'm privileged to have you on the show. I know that my viewers and listeners will be wishing you well, and I do hope we speak again soon.
Thank you, Mark. Take care.
Thank you, Karen Long. Well, there you go. Give blood. I give blood. Did you know it's really healthy to give blood? It's actually good for you, apparently. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I'm wearing a doctor's jacket, but it is apparently quite healthy and a great thing to do. Fascinating stuff. Look, lots more to come. In the 10 o'clock hour, tomorrow's papers hot off the press, plus my take at 10, which, let me tell you, is unmissable. Lloyd's Bank.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight, where, as you might have discovered in the last few minutes, we don't do boring. In My Take at 10, a Lloyds Bank boss has condemned the Prime Minister for pointing out there's a difference between a man and a woman. Britain's corporations are now institutionally woke. What utter bankers. The King and Princes William and Harry call Hamas terrorists. Why can't the BBC? And is Joe Biden fit to handle this international crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of US royal, showbiz and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, tomorrow's papers live from the studio with reaction from my pundits this evening. So, a packed show, lots to get through, but first, here is the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good evening to you. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Israel's Prime Minister has warned the next stage in their war against Hamas is coming. Benjamin Netanyahu visited troops stationed on the front line near the Gaza Strip earlier. Hundreds of thousands of reservists have been mobilised. Israel's military says it's preparing to attack by land, sea and air in what they say will be a comprehensive coordinated offensive. Forces have been deployed throughout the country as Israel prepares for significant ground operations. And Mr. Netanyahu has previously pledged to wipe Hamas from the face of the earth. His administration has also warned Hezbollah, the armed group based in Lebanon, not to intervene, and that doing so would risk the destruction of Lebanon. A deadline given for the evacuation of civilians from northern Gaza has now expired. Thousands of people have been fleeing south towards the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. The only route out of Gaza not under Israeli control has been closed because of airstrikes, although the US has been trying to negotiate a 5-hour window to allow civilians out of the blockaded enclave and humanitarian aid in. A young British girl who's trapped in Gaza says she fears for her life.
I'm really in fear, and every time I just have to have the thought of me dying in a bomb in Gaza. It's not a good thing. And every place I go run away, and I just find bombs and I find dead people, and maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
Well, tens of thousands of people gathered for pro-Palestinian demonstrations across the UK today as the conflict in Gaza escalates. More than 1,000 officers were deployed in London. Police saying anyone showing support for Hamas may face arrest. In the end, 7 people were detained. Demonstrators carried flags and flares and chanted pro-Palestinian slogans, urging world leaders to condemn Israel's actions.
You know, what's happened in Israel is tragic. But what's happening in Gaza now is beyond description. I think it shows the depth of feeling of the British public. There are people from absolutely every type of skin color, creed, political persuasion. It's amazing.
And Qatari banker Sheikh Yassim has withdrawn from the process to buy Manchester United. The billionaire's offer of around £5 billion was for 100% of the club, and he'd pledged to further fund infrastructure projects and also to clear debt. It leaves the British businessman Sir Jim Ratcliffe as the only other declared bidder, and he's understood to be working on a 25% stake, which would see the American Glazer family retain majority control of the club. We're live across the UK, on TV, on digital radio, and if you want us on your smart speaker, just say, play GB News. That's it for the moment. Now back to Mark.
Great to have you with us tonight, Aaron. Aaron Armstrong returns at 11 o'clock. It's Mark Dolan tonight, and the King and Princes William and Harry call Hamas terrorists. So why can't the BBC? And is Joe Biden fit to handle this international crisis? I'll be asking the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Thousands of pro-Palestine supporters marched across the UK today with 7 arrests in London. We'll bring you the latest, and we'll be asking whether those waving the flag of the Hamas terror group should face criminal prosecution. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages with live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. Political commentator Lynn May, writer Benedict Spence and academic Lisa Mackenzie. Plus, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. Let me just, before we do the Take at 10, just pause for a moment and say that a few minutes ago I had one of the most extraordinary on-air experiences of my career with the Channel 4 star from How Clean Is Your House, Kim Woodburn. We were discussing Holly Willoughby's departure from This Morning. Kim's been on the show many times. She's a fiery character, she's unpredictable, and she's entitled to her view. However, she used an expletive about Holly Willoughby. It was the B word, a female dog, if you want to know the detail. And at first I was shocked. She repeated the word several times, and I thought she crossed a line. I believe in free speech, and this is the home of diverse opinion on Mark Dolan tonight, but I just feel she went too far. And I will allow you to be judge and jury, and that's via your email. So just before the Take at 10, here is a response from the great British public to what you may have seen or heard. Letizia, lovely Italian name. Hi, Letizia. Letizia says, Mark, get this woman off your show. She's embarrassing. She makes my toes curl. How can she sit there and use such dreadful language about Holly Willoughby or anyone for that matter? Linda says, Mark, you say that you agree with free speech. Manifestly, you don't. If Kim wants to describe someone as a B word, she can. You're becoming a wet, says Linda. Elizabeth says, Mark, good on you for asking Kim Woodburn to go, for using rude language. Probably not a good idea to have her on if she can't discuss a subject in a calm and rational way. I'm not keen on Holly, but abusing her is wrong. And just 2 more before the Take at 10. Hi, Mark, says Andrew. Andrew's not happy with me. You've just given in to the woke. Kim was absolutely right to call Willie horribly a complete B word. And last but not least, John says, look, I don't like Holly Willoughby, but I think Kim went too far. We need to remember her mental health with everything which has come to light over the past few weeks, and we all need to beware of what we say. Well, look, thank you for your opinions. That is all that matters to me. Keep them coming. Mark at gbnews.com. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So a busy hour to come. Let's start with my Take at 10. What a time to be alive. We live in an era where facts, the truth, reality are controversial and will get you cancelled. Enter stage left, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, who's got himself in trouble with Lloyds Bank, clearly the black horse of the banking family. Why is he in trouble? For saying this.
A man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's just common sense.
Absolute heresy. May the angels of the Lord strike him down. But there was worse to come. Strap yourselves in for more dangerous facts. Trade Minister Kemi Badenoch said she would not apologise for fighting for a society that knows what a woman is. Outrageous. Send her to the gulag now. And what about that outrageous bigot, Health Secretary Steve Barclay, who has pledged to keep biological men out of single-sex female wards on the grounds of women's safety? What a heathen. 50 lashes for this non-believer. Now, the excellent Guido Fawkes political website have unearthed correspondence from the Human Resources Director at Lloyds Bank, who declares her pronouns, of course she does, in an email sent to 30,000 members of staff. And here's what she said. Dear all, like many of you, I was appalled to hear the rhetoric coming from the Conservative Party conference this week, targeting the trans and non-binary community. Outrageous. The Prime Minister targeting delegates with information about human beings, information that we learnt during GCSE biology. In the email, she goes on, hearing language that fuels hate and division is shocking. There you go. She's played the hate card. This is woke bingo. Hate sounds bad, doesn't it? But all too often these days, it's shorthand for people saying things, often truthful or factual, that the woke cult do not want to hear. It's often not hate, they just hate the message. She goes on. I'm aware of the brilliant work undertaken in the last few days by our trans working group and their allies to mobilise support, offering safe spaces for colleagues. She's absolutely right. We've got to be safe from reality of human biology. Facts kill, folks. And what are these safe spaces exactly? Do they have table tennis tables, I should say? Do they have bean bags? Have they got Nespresso machines? No. Safe spaces are ideological bubbles divorced from reality where this nonsense goes unchallenged. None of this woke rubbish stands up to scrutiny. Now, look, if you transition, and I've got friends that have, good luck to you. Dignity, respect and support are paramount. But why all of this politics from the senior management of a bank whose job it is to provide mortgages and bank loans? Be clear, this stuff isn't just misguided, it can be dangerous because it sells the fiction that a biological man is now a woman and vice versa. The real-world consequences is that women, you know, the old-school ones with wombs, losing their hard-fought sex-based rights. Female-only changing rooms, bathrooms, domestic abuse and rape crisis centres. And is it too much to ask for female-only prisons? And then there's the small matter of the integrity of women's sport. This week, 2 transgender cyclists, 2 biological males identifying as female, have taken the top spots on the podium at the Chicago Cyclo-Cross Cup after triumphing in a women's race. And this is progress, is it? Biological men usually still rocking the full meat and 2 veg, breaking every record in women's competition. That's why I push back on this nonsense. The realities of human biology are the last hill to die on. If you accept that women can have penises and testicles, you can only imagine what they'll ask us to believe next. The last word goes to Rishi Sunak.
Patients should know when hospitals are talking about men or women. And we shouldn't get bullied into believing that people can be any sex they want to be. They can't.
And that is what this is all about. He got it. Bullying. Wokeism is a cult, and you must follow the rules, the religious scripture, or you will be excommunicated and damned. They will try to destroy you. But in the end, the truth doesn't care about your feelings, whether you're she, her, or he, him. If you're triggered by the facts, ho-hum. What's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.com. Now, it's worth pointing out that trans people are some of the most marginalised and abused in our society. Lloyds Bank could argue that what they're trying to do is be inclusive to their workforce in an ever-changing world. We've reached out to Lloyds Bank and we are yet to receive a reply. I'm sure they've got their reasons for doing this, but I'm just worried about the can of worms that it opens. But let me know your thoughts by email. Reaction now from my top pundits, political commentator Lynn May, writer Benedict Spence and academic Lisa McKenzie. Lisa, can I start with you? What do you make of this email to 30,000 staff?
I am extremely cynical about this sort of constant flag waving, constant sort of agreeing with one thing or all this sort of hate stuff. And the reason I'm really, really cynical is probably different from you. Because when you've got banks and sort of multinational corporates, you know, the sort of measures of capitalism using this idea of diversity, it means they don't ever have to think about equality. So what they can do is say, look what great people we are. We're anti, you know, we believe in Black Lives Matter, we believe in Trans Lives Matter, we believe in, you know, any other amount of thing. In fact, they can believe in everything, but that makes them a good, we're good, we're the good guys. When actually what they're not doing is dealing with any sort of inequalities at all. So anything that does this, I am highly, highly cynical of it.
OK, what do you make of this development, Benedict? I think it's characteristic of the corporate world now, which is institutionally woke.
I think we need to remember that banks exist to make money, and this is the same for all of these industries. You see it with the football a lot as well, and I think that that's partly actually why we've had this furore over lighting up Wembley or holding up the Israeli flag, because it's not a decision that's based on morality, it's based on which will make us the most money. It's also why I think, rather cynically, all of the football clubs waited until Palestinians started being killed by the Israelis to then put out statements saying it's bad that people are dying in general. They didn't just do it when it happened to Israeli civilians. They very cynically waited. And again, yes, I agree. This is actually, it's cynical. It's about appealing to a set of the population to say we're good people, you can trust us, you can work with us. It's not actually about making people's lives better, it's about enticing in customers. If there was no money to be made from this, and at some point there will not be money to be made from this, I suspect that public opinion will change, at which point you'll stop seeing them saying things like we're inclusive and we're LGBTQ plus friendly, because it will no longer be profitable. And that's always how you have to look at this. Well, it's about money.
Lynn May, I'm sure that the director of HR at Lloyds Bank is a decent person. This shouldn't be a case of, playing the man or woman rather than the ball. Perhaps all this individual is trying to do is make members of staff who have changed their gender identity feel comfortable and safe. What's wrong with that?
No, I pretty much echo the other two with regards to, I think this is just a load of PR guff. And if they were genuine with these sorts of narratives, then they would be consistent with regards to some of their wealthier clients who are from the Middle East, who have publicly stated on numerous occasions they do not support LGBTQ, they do not support transgender, they don't support any of these things. Are they going to close their accounts? No, they won't. Are they going to say, no, we do not accept money from you because you do not align yourself with the LG? No. So it's OK for them. And it's the same with corporations that make vast amount of money when they go to the Middle East, like when we saw football in Qatar. There were no flags then. How convenient. So I'm just so happy. I'm not happy with the Conservative Party for a number of things. However, they've got this right. A man is a man and a woman is a woman. If you want to go and suggest that you feel like a female or you feel like a man, you're well within your rights to do that, and I will respect that. But biologically, you will never be different to your biological sex that you were born with.
OK, well, look, let me know your thoughts on this, Mark, at gbnews.com. I'd particularly like to hear from you if you are a trans person. Let me know your experience and your reaction to this story. Now, the King and Princes William and Harry call Hamas terrorists, so why can't the BBC? And is Joe Biden fit to handle this international crisis? I'll be going to Hollywood, California, and the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, plus tomorrow's papers. See you in 2.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, Rishi Sunak has got himself in trouble with the director of HR at Lloyds Bank. He was at Conservative Party conference making his keynote speech, and he said, "A man is a man and a woman is a woman. It's just common sense." Well, the very senior management of Lloyds Bank have written an email to 30,000 staff saying that if you feel unsafe or attacked by what the Prime Minister has had to say, pointing out biological reality, then you can go to a safe space. I don't know what a safe space is. Has it got ping pong tables, latte machines, soft cushions? Anyway, big emails coming in on this left and right. Hello, Mark, says Steve. It is right that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. If a man wants to live as a woman and be addressed as such, that's fine, but they're not a woman regardless. They're still going to need a prostate exam no matter what they identify as. Real women do not. Lorna says, in regards to Lloyds Bank, what a bunch of hypocrites. Inclusivity means recognising the importance of biological men and women. I wonder what the LGBTQ+ community would say if a biological woman declared herself a drag queen and entered a beauty contest for drag queens and won the title. I can imagine they would be furious. How about this from Matt? By the way, so many emails coming in. We've rather broken the internet tonight. Mark at gbnews.com. Matt says, Mark, the banks ruthlessly exploit people to make money, and then rich woke people tell us working people how evil we are. It is total hypocrisy. Some strong language. By the way, it's been an evening of strong language. Ooh, expletives popping in on email here. Let me just change the word slightly from this anonymous email. Mark, the world has gone to a bad place. A man is a man, a woman is a woman, forever and ever. A 35-year-old veteran male. I'm sure you're a male. I don't need to see the proof. Listen, lots of other stories to get through. Can I just talk to you for a moment about what we've seen in London? Oh, great news. Well, I was going to come to that. We will come to that during the papers. I wanted to discuss with you whether or not it's right that people waving the Hamas flag, Hamas being a terror organisation, should face criminal prosecution. We'll get to that shortly with the papers, but it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, I'm so sorry, we had a bit of trouble with the line there. It will be a shorter chat than usual, which is terribly cruel. But let's talk about the royal family's response to what has happened in Israel. And they sound very united.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the royal family, terrorism hits close to home for the king. He experienced the grief of losing his mentor to terrorism after the bombing that took Earl Mountbatten. The IRA claimed responsibility for that in 1979. That devastated the king. His grandmother on his father's side is buried in Israel and was celebrated for fighting a Jewish family in her home in Athens during the Nazi occupation. So I do believe that the king has always cared deeply for the Jewish community, and this is the worst act of anti-Semitic violence since the Holocaust. And then with the Prince and Princess of Wales' statement, that seemed especially courageous. The line, "The horrors inflicted by Hamas's terrorist attack upon Israel are appalling. They utterly condemn them." Those are, they're clearly drawing the line in the sand there and potentially creating enemies in the process. And I applaud their bravery.
I agree. I really think that the Prince and Princess of Wales have been particularly courageous, particularly principled. The King's been brilliant. And let me also congratulate Harry and Meghan for an unambiguous email in support of innocent Israeli citizens. Well done, Harry. Well done, Meghan. Let's have more of that. Can we talk about the Commander-in-Chief, the most powerful man in the world, the President of the United States, Joe Biden? What's his reaction been to the horror and the tragedy of what's happened in Israel? Is America reeling from this attack?
I feel like there is some guilt, if I'm being honest with you, associated with all of this, Mark, because we have seen this recent poll come out by JL Partners that asked 1,000 Americans for their views on what's happening. 43% of those individuals said that it was a mistake for us to unfreeze that $6 billion of Iranian funds. And so I do think that it was only 29% that agreed that that money should have been exchanged. 28 said that they didn't know. But for the most part, I think that Americans feel a sense of guilt because it does feel like Hamas is sponsored by Iran. And, you were talking about the BBC, and how they refuse to call these guys terrorists. We do have a cable news outlet here, MSNBC, that has shown some sympathy towards Palestine and Hamas. Their numbers have declined 33%, Mark, 33%. In comparison with Fox News has been explicitly clear on the brutalities of Hamas, up 42% in total viewership. So you do see people punishing some of these outlets, these news outlets that are refusing to acknowledge how hateful this experience is.
Well, listen, this programme has no trouble saying that Hamas are a terror group. What happened to innocent Israeli citizens on the 7th of October was appalling and reprehensible, and Israel has a full right to defend herself. There. It wasn't that hard, was it? Listen, the clock's against us, Kinsey, but let's talk about one of the most famous men in the world, the actor Will Smith. What's going on?
Well, his wife, or what is she now? Because she's just admitted, Jada Pinkett Smith has admitted that they've been secretly separated for 7 years, Mark. She's, of course, trying to hawk a book. You and I covered Will Smith, the infamous slap at the Oscars. We couldn't believe it. This was a man that has fallen from grace, all at an attempt at chivalry. And we find out, thanks to Jada's media tour, that they've been separated for 7 years. They've both seen other people. She says Tupac Shakur was her soulmate. We're literally watching the unraveling of a dynasty before our eyes, and a lot of us feel lied to.
Indeed so. Very complicated. It's more complicated than my love life. Last but not least, briefly, if you can, Kinsey, King Charles.
Yeah.
He looks like he's seen a ghost.
Now, this is coming from paranormal historian Richard Felix. He said that the king was once haunted in the Sandringham Library. Him and a footman were followed around by a ghost. This is in a New Hello podcast episode. He also says that there is I believe it's a monk that haunts Buckingham Palace. That Buckingham Palace was built on a site that belonged to the monks of Westminster Abbey. And, that very well might be why the king refuses to live there, Mark.
Well, listen, I tell you something. It's a scary story to finish on. Kinsey, you're no ghost. We'll catch up next week. My thanks to the brilliant Kinsey Schofield, and she returns. Do check out her brilliant podcast and website, To Die For Daily. Coming up, we've got the papers. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, it's 10:30. On time. Producer Greg will be happy. Great to have Greg back, by the way. He's been away for a few weeks, but he returns, our brilliant producer. And look, a lot to get through. And I've got to say, I'm deeply shocked by the front page story of The Mail. It's a shocking splash. It's in relation to those pro-Palestinian demonstrations in London today, with a number of individuals brandishing an image of the paraglider who entered Israeli space in order to kill 260 people at a music festival in cold blood. These people are in London, in our country, in our capital city, celebrating an act of terror, an act of carnage. Take a look at this. You ghouls is the headline. Hatred on Britain's streets. 2 women are among the thousands on yesterday's pro-Palestine march in London, brazenly revelling in the massacre of dozens of young Israelis by paragliding Hamas terrorists. So why didn't the police stop them? Now, of course, it says yesterday, that's tomorrow's papers. That was earlier today. So it's 2 women who were on this march wearing an image of someone paragliding to conduct murder. Absolutely shocking story in the Mail. We need to debate whether or not people who celebrate terrorism should be dealt with by the law. The Sunday Express now. Bad day to be Prince of Wales as rugby dream ends. Also, Holly Willoughby linked to hit show for quick TV comeback. Also, as Corbyn joins thousands of Brits marching in support of Palestinians just a week after the Hamas butchered Jews, Sunak gives a clear message. The Prime Minister says we stand by Israel always. The Observer, Israel warns fleeing Gazans the next stage is coming. And my mother sacrificed her life to save me from Hamas killer is a personal account in The Observer. War in the Middle East, Sunday Mirror. Hamas terror squads knew their victims. Escape to hell, civilians caught in raids as Israel says it is ready to invade the Gaza Strip. Sunday Telegraph, Israel set to hit Hamas from land, sea and air. BBC Arabic reporters appear to justify the killing of civilians by terrorists. Pro-Palestinian protests marred by anti-Semitic chants is the other story in the Telegraph. The Daily Star Sunday, a bit of light relief. If you're worried about a zombie invasion and happen to live in Leeds, then we have seriously bad news for you. Apocalypse Nout. It's got to be the best headline of the week, hasn't it, Lisa?
It has. The Daily Star every Saturday night cheers me.
They deliver.
I do like it. I like the one when the woman married the poltergeist.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one as well.
Can you remember what the headline was?
I don't know. I think it's something about the wedding night.
Wedding fright?
Bumpy wedding night or something like that.
My favourite.
I had one of those.
Yeah.
My favourite Daily Star headline was one where it says, boffins is a term of abuse, say boffins.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Greg, what have you got for us? Geigel.
Geigel?
That would do it. There you go. You know what? That's one to think about.
That's why Greg's in the background.
I should give you the story, by the way. I'm here to give you some information. So, Apocalypse Nout. Don't panic unless you live in Leeds. That is the city most likely to be overrun by zombies. It has more cemeteries where the evil dead like to chill out per head than anywhere in the UK. Least likely to be invaded, the Isle of Scilly. Well, what a silly sentence that was. There you go, folks. Those are your front pages. A bit of light and shade, which I think we need on a Saturday night. Let's get reaction now from my brilliant pundits. Political commentator Lynn May, writer Benedict Spence and academic Lisa Mackenzie. And Benedict, just a very, very appropriate headline in the Mail. You ghouls, two individuals at this pro-Palestinian march, brandishing an image of a paraglider who murdered 260 people.
Yeah, I mean, it's two people among potentially 100,000, but these are not the only examples of people behaving in an appalling way throughout the protests that we saw in London. And, of course, there were also protests elsewhere. And, I mean, it's a particularly grotesque thing, given, of course, the nature of what happened, but also in terms of, if you were to try and do an alternative verse, say, on the right, if you had a right-wing group of people making jokes about, I don't know, Pinochet throwing people out of helicopters, people would rightly be furious, and there would be no tolerance of this sort of thing whatsoever. But perhaps this has just slipped under the radar because it's so recent. But to see the scale of how what was ostensibly meant to be a pro-Palestine march, which, you can debate the sensitivity of that, given the timing all you want, the fact that that descended in great swathes into anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic chants, people shouting out about Zionists, posters of missing Jewish children that were plastered all across London being ripped down by people. It happened again on the march today. It is disgraceful that in a country that bases so much of its modern identity around the aftermath of the Second World War, the horrors of the Holocaust, and the lessons that we were supposed to learn from that, never again, specifically about the Jewish people, that actually this can be tolerated from even a small minority. And, I think a lot of people have been trying to push the idea this week that this backlash is an example of how multiculturalism has failed in Britain. And actually, that's not true. The best example of how multiculturalism has worked in some places and can work is Britain's Jewish community. We've seen actually how well ingratiated and how well embedded it is into British society. They are the example of how it is that different ethnic groups that come over and try to live their lives should be embraced and do manage to embrace themselves. So why it is that they are targeted above all else in the manner that they have, it's disgraceful.
Now, 2 weeks ago, I've got no problem with this pro-Palestinian march, Lisa. 2 months from now, no problem either.
Yeah.
And I think that Benedict's right to use that word timing.
Yeah.
I know that those on the march today, predominantly peaceful, they probably would like to see a two-state solution, and they're probably worried, as am I, about Palestinian civilians.
Yeah.
But I don't think that 7 days after what happened in Israel, they should have been marching.
I think that they should march. I think people should march. If they feel strongly about something, then you do go on the streets. I think that's the right place to be. My problem with it was the sort of mass flying of thousands and thousands of Palestinian flags. I am not a nationalist. I don't think nationalism does anybody any good. I don't think nationalism has ever been a cause to sort of release the working class from their chains. So therefore, for me, the flying of the flags, I thought was insensitive.
It happened on the day of the atrocities, didn't it?
Because just 7 days ago, those flags, what were being flown today, were flown last week as a terrorist group was killing people, innocent people. I just think you can show your support for Palestine, you can show your support for oppressed people. You don't really need to take it to this level.
Indeed. Lynn, what's your view of, and that is the front page of the Mail, if you're just joining us, you ghouls, 2 individuals brandishing an image of the paraglider who murdered 260 people. Should those people have a right to free speech, or ought they to be dealt with by the law?
I think it's horrific that they're almost celebrating what happened to the civilians in Israel. But I think it's equally disgusting for, you know, people who support Israel that says, you know, there are going to be casualties irrespective of whether thousands are going to die in Gaza. They have a right to defend themselves. I think it's kind of one-sided with regards to a lot of the press at the moment. I think we need to look at the civilians on both sides, because as we know, even with our own governments just do what they want sometimes. They ignore their electorate, they ignore people. We can see that with COVID, we can see that with multiple things, and we're fearful of that even with rejoining the EU. So I think we need
people power is under threat, isn't it?
Exactly. We need to separate the Palestinian civilians, the Israeli civilians, from the governments that just want to power grab. And that's my frustration with this conversation. I think it's OK for people to go out and peacefully march and show solidarity with the flag. A lot of ignorant people are conflating Hamas and the Hamas flag with the Palestinian flag. They're completely different. And sadly, people on both sides, innocent women, children, the disabled, the elderly, are going to die because of these governments.
So if you are brandishing this image, this illustration of the paraglider who murdered 250 people at a peace festival in Israel on the border with Gaza, would you arrest those people, Benedict?
Yeah, no question.
I mean, the law would be on their side if they did, wouldn't it?
OK, well, change the law. I think it's disgraceful. I don't think you can celebrate terrorist actions. This is not the same as solidarity with the Palestinian people. If you wave a Palestinian flag, that's fine. You're supporting the Palestinian cause. But actually actively celebrating the anti-Semitic terrorist murder of women and children, the rape, the hostage-taking, yeah, I have no problem with arresting people for that, because you are effectively endorsing terrorism.
But who do we decide who terrorists are? I'm not going to...
Hamas are terrorists.
I know, I agree.
So you agree?
I agree.
Let Lynn finish.
I agree that they're terrorists. However, I'm not going to sit here and say the United States of America is terrorist or Britain's terrorist. However, the United States of America have dropped the most bombs in recent years, killing civilians. The Labour Party endorsed the Iraq War, killing hundreds of thousands of, you know, but if I were to wear the Labour Party badge, should I be arrested because
Barack Obama killed a few people?
Because that's an internationally recognised government. It's an internationally recognised government,
but
and Hamas
Palestine
are not.
it is.
No, Hamas is not.
I'm not supporting them in any way.
Fatah, the Palestinian Liberation Organisation, there are lots of different groups that people who support Palestine can nail their colours
But at the hands of
picking the one that is effectively, it is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. It is not a standalone group. It is internationally recognised as a military provisional wing of the government of Iran, an illegitimate one.
So we're legal terrorists, is what you're saying?
Oh, yes, that's the way the world works.
The editor of the Jewish Chronicle, unless I'm mistaken, described Hamas as worse than ISIS.
Well, yeah, I definitely... I hope and I agree that Hamas need to be rooted out. If you speak to Palestinians on the ground, they don't even want them there. The last vote that they could even have election was 2006. They are an oppressed people. When people say, well, why haven't they revolted? You try and revolt when you live on aid.
Correct.
You know?
And I think for us, I think we need to ask, you know, why would somebody do this? You know, is it the sort of... Have we completely dehumanised people?
Well, when you say do this, you mean wear the image of the paraglider?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what is that even saying. Why would you even do that? You know, unless... You know, what...
I think it's horrific. I think it's horrific, and I don't agree with it. But when speaking to a lot of Palestinian people, thousands more have died in Palestine.
But I still don't know why.
Israelis.
But I still don't know why you would do this, though. I still don't know why you would do.
Jew baiting.
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got no time for this. This is endorsing a terrorist group. Their raison d'etre is not the liberation of Palestine, Hamas. As I said, they're not the Palestinian Liberation Organization. They exist to kill Jewish people. That is what is in their charter. That is what they say on their broadcast networks. That is what this is. It's a different question when you're talking about Fatah, or even if you're talking about Hezbollah in Lebanon. They are different organisations with different agendas. Hamas is explicit.
I hear what you're saying. I fully
when
agree.
they show themselves, that's what they do.
I fully agree, but then the UN have condemned Israel's advice to the people. Israel have condemned.
The UN failed to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You cannot take that seriously.
You're doing whataboutery.
It's not whataboutery.
One at a time.
It's not whataboutery at all. You're the one that raised this. Would you say that that's whataboutery? You're saying what about the UN? Actually, the UN is a body that serves the interests of its members. That is not universal. That is not always
the UN has condemned what Israel have advised the people of Gaza to do, which is to head south.
Because it's a war crime. It's a war crime for them to give 24 hours to 2 million people to move to prevent them from getting the basic essentials in life, water, food and electricity. That is breaking international law, because that is punishment via the collective of the population, which is a war crime.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm going to say something, and this is going to be very unpopular.
Do you not
now let Benedict speak.
This is going to be something that is incredibly unpopular, because people in the West who live very safe lives, this is not actually how the world works. And if you want an example, I can give you loads. 2 weeks ago, when the people of Artsakh, or Nagorno-Karabakh, as it is called in the West, found the Azerbaijani army in their land one May, and they said, well, you can go anywhere you want, but you can't stay here, leave. And hundreds of thousands of people were forced at gunpoint to leave, and nobody said anything. If you want to go through the different groups across the Middle East,
and they're all war crimes.
Benedict, finish your point.
Across the Middle East, if you want it to be the Kurds, if you want it to be the Armenians, you want to go further, you want to talk about the Uyghurs, or the Rohingya, or the Yazidis. If you said, are ISIS worse than Hamas? ISIS put those people in cages and set fire to them. They're all going to the same circle of hell, by the way. It's irrelevant to say who is worse than worse. But the point is, actually, it is only this issue. It is only the Palestinian issue that gets raised. It's none of those other groups that ever gets raised.
They do.
And this is no, they absolutely do not. They absolutely do not. I tell you what, when was the last time...
Does it make it right?
It doesn't matter. That's the thing.
No,
it doesn't matter.
You, does it make it right?
In international circles, it doesn't matter. Right now, the Turkish government are the ones that are going to go out and they're going to condemn what's happening in Gaza. Do they raise objections? Does anybody raise objections when it is the Kurds that they bomb?
It's still wrong.
No, they don't. Russia has said that what is going on in Gaza is wrong, but they are bombing the Ukrainians right now. Everybody is a hypocrite, and it is only people in the West who see it through this lens and go, oh, but what about international law? International law only matters if you go in and you arrest the people that ordered these attacks.
Lynn,
Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
My final thoughts are, with regards to many of these countries in the Middle East, like Iran, they have had sanctions. Israel has never had sanctions for breaking international law. Explain that.
Israel is blockaded by countries that are opposed to it. It has been invaded 3 times since its formation. And it's
They've still never had sanctions.
The 3 countries, the 3 times it has been invaded, every time Israel has hit back the countries that invaded it, at which point those countries have then gone, oh, but we want to revert to the international agreed borders that we had before we invaded.
Because they're encroaching on more land.
These were internationally recognised borders that Israel agreed to, the West agreed to. The only people that said no were the Palestinians. They keep losing.
Why should they capitulate?
Because they keep losing.
Look, I tell you what we're going to do. Greg, can we just keep this going? Let's take a quick break and we'll return to this conversation. Was it wrong? Is the timing wrong to have a pro-Palestinian march 7 days after the carnage in Israel? Let me know your thoughts, Mark at GBNews.com. Coming up next, we've got the Sun newspaper and a headline that one particular Premier League star may not want to wake up to. That's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, Amy has got The Sun for us, do you? Let's have a look. Here it comes, and it's the front page. The Sun on Sunday. Girls told to sign order. Premier League ace, secret sex party legal gag. A Premier League footballer hosted a secret sex party with models forced to sign legal gagging orders. Leaked video. Just very hard to read this because it's a little bit fuzzy. They were told that they had to sign a document even though they were part of this outrageous sex party. But these Premier League stars don't just have a high libido, they have powerful lawyers as well. Madonna at the O2. Madge takes it kneesy. There you go, the amazing Madonna performing in a leg brace. We wish her a speedy recovery. There you go. It's one of her less provocative outfits. Listen, we've been debating at length this march, this pro-Palestinian march in the capital and also Manchester and elsewhere, a week after atrocities in Israel. Linda says, how is one side treated differently? One side is receiving more attention as the victims. They're all people who deserve a peaceful place to live. Everyone needs to swat up on history. And Raymond says, I don't care if the Israeli army and Hamas wipe each other out. Frankly, it's innocent people who don't even want war who end up getting killed. That's what I hate about war, because nobody wants war. It is politicians who make war. We can't disagree with that. Listen, these two had a ding-dong. Are you Team Benedict or Team May?
I'm Team people on the... I'm Team people. And I agree... Yeah, and I agree with it. I agree with what people are saying. I think when you are young, you get very fired up by different issues and you can get very engaged in it. And I think when you get older and you have families and you start to understand that thin line between life and death, I think things take on a different look. But what really worries me is all of this hate and all of this anger, where is it going? There's nothing good going to come out of this.
Correct. Indeed so. Wise words. Listen, let's get to your headline heroes and back page zeros. Who's your hero of the day, Lynn?
My hero is Conservative MP Crispin Blunt for reminding everyone that if we continuously support Israel in the way that we've been doing, they absolutely have a right to defend themselves. But I'm so happy that he brought out the fact of breaking international law.
He said
the civilians.
He said that the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, risks being prosecuted for his support of Israel at the moment.
Yeah, because what's happening is we're moving away from this, they have a right to defend themselves, which Israel absolutely do. But when the politicians, especially like Rishi and the Defence Secretary, ask questions, OK, what about the usage of, like, phosphorus, or what about, you know, no water, no electricity to the Gaza, they're kind of skirting around it. They should absolutely condemn any form of international breakage of law, but at the same time, they can support and should support Israel being able to defend themselves.
Even though Hamas are using civilians as a weapon?
Yeah,
how do they defend themselves if that happens?
Well, the thing
like
is...
the headquarters of Hamas, I'm told, is in the basement of a hospital.
But this is my thing. Israel have so much support in terms of military. Okay. Mossad and their intelligence are really, really, like, some of the best in the world. They should be able to pinpoint Hamas instead of having thousands die and forcing people out.
Let's hope they do.
I don't think war happens like that.
We're not yet there.
I would love to have more time, but we're going to power through your hero of the day, Benedict.
I mean, my hero is somebody who I would normally not be very on side with, and that's the Scottish First Minister, Humza Yousaf.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I think
very moving.
He has been... I don't think much of his politics. I don't really think much of him as a politician, but I think he's been really quite dignified in the way that he's handled both members of his family being trapped in Gaza with no way out, but also the way that he has... I think he attended the memorial of one of the people who was murdered by Hamas, who was an Israeli, a Jewish person, and he went to the memorial service and he embraced the family and he said, your pain is my pain. And I think he's been very good at actually toning down rhetoric, being very measured, and not letting his own people worry. Yes, I think that...
Bringing people together.
I do think that he has handled everything very well, it must be.
Lisa, briefly, your hero.
I'm moving right away from this. I mean, I'm moving right away from it. I am one of those very few people who still watch BBC Question Time on Thursday nights.
That's a good show.
To see what the politicians are doing. So on Thursday night, the Tory MP was there, tried to defend their record on housing, and the whole audience laughed at them.
OK, there you go.
So, for me, the audience was the hero.
OK, look, I've just got names only, please, your back page zero.
Jada Pinkett Smith for embarrassing Will Smith.
How dare she?
The FA for waiting for the Israeli counter-attack before condemning and issuing a statement about the violence going on in Gaza.
Absolute numpties.
And bedbugs, because we've got enough to be worrying about.
Definitely.
I'm with you on that.
I got to say, I wondered why I was so itchy tonight, because I was hugging Lisa earlier. Thank you, Lisa, Benedict and Lynn. We're back tomorrow at 9, and the Brilliant Headliners is next.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed your Saturday. Some of us did catch a few showers around. Those are slowly dying out throughout this evening and overnight, particularly for inland areas, but they will probably persist for some coastal districts, still quite wintry over the higher ground areas of Scotland. Underneath the starry skies that we do see developing overnight, though, temperatures will be dropping down quite rapidly. Low single figures for many of our towns and cities, but rural areas will certainly drop below freezing, so quite a frosty, chilly start for many of us come Sunday morning. But there will also be a fair amount of sunshine to compensate for that. A lot of the showers will be fewer and further between compared to what we have seen today. Still a fair amount across northern Scotland, a cloudier day here.